Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to be discussing yet another TikToker who did a makeover of their home and the internet hated it. And as usual, at the end of the video, I'm going to show you how we could have made it better and how we could have avoided this poor woman getting bullied so hard for her design choices. Let's get into it. So today, the creator that we're looking at is Emma Genzarian. Hopefully I said her name correctly. And she blew up about a year ago on the internet because of her living room makeover. Pretty much the backstory is that she moved in with her boyfriend and she decided to change up the living room and actually the rest of the home. And the way she changed it up, not too many people were happy about it. So I'm sure you can see why the internet got quite upset over this. The original room was very moody, very inviting, and had its own personality. And honestly, bravo to him. Usually when I see a single man's space, it's pretty bare basic, gray, black, and white. They tend to not decorate. So having a space that is actually really well balanced, I'm very impressed with. But then we move on to hers. Everything that is his has been stripped away. The only thing that really remained is the green wall and the coffee table, which she eventually ends up changing out anyway. And I think one of the biggest critiques people have is that it doesn't feel inviting anymore. It looks like a dentist's office that you'd go to. There's no personality. It's simply just sad beige mum everywhere without highlighting her own personality. But probably the biggest thing that people were most upset about was this statue horse that was on the windowsill that decided to not be in the after image. And pretty much the biggest critique was that there was no integration of style. It's like she came in and was like a new renter and just went, nope, this is all mine, and completely removed everything of his, which seems to be the biggest critique that people have. But mind you, this is not where she stopped. There is actually more, so let's have a look. So the before kitchen. It's cute. Obviously it's not perfect, but I really like the granite countertop. I think it's nice, clean, and modern. It looks like a really small apartment, so honestly, this is perfect. You don't need to touch it. It's functional for sure. And, you know, okay, maybe it's not the right colors and stuff, but you could definitely decorate it and make it feel a little bit more like you. But if you have the money, you can go ahead and IKEA it out and completely change the look. Honestly, this does look quite nice in the sense that all the colors work together. In the before image, it does feel a little bit disjointed. You've got a little bit of a cooler wall on the back there, but then you've got the warm lighting and the warmer sort of greenish looking tone that is on the countertop, whereas this has obviously gone ahead and completely polished it. However, in saying that, it kind of looks like a show home. The space before it obviously has a bit of clutter and stuff, but it looks like someone lives there. And the after, well, there isn't even any form of decoration to even suggest there is someone there in terms of having a level of a personality. This is probably something that I've noticed quite frequently, is that, look, it's totally okay to have your minimalist or sad girl beige sort of aesthetic, but in saying that, it looks very cookie cutter. It looks very the same as everything else. The space before it had a bit of personality. It wasn't quite perfect. There were things about it that were at least functional and it didn't need to be switched out. Whereas now, it looks like an IKEA showroom. There really isn't that much of a difference in terms of the rest of the space. I do really like the timber flooring. She actually added that in, and she did that throughout the entire space, it looks like. I'm personally not a huge fan of that style of flooring in terms of the way it's been set, but in this space, I think it actually looks quite nice. So I'm going to give her props there. This is an alternative image of the kitchen. I really think this is cool. This is very quirky, really nice. Obviously, again, not perfect, but the guy's made it his own. We've got this really cool like concrete effect on the wall, and then we've got some artwork, got a spice rack, and look, the kitchen table and chairs. It's such a dude thing. If it works, I sit. In saying that though, it is a small space, so whatever works, just use it, sure. And now it has been switched out for additional space for the kitchen. Honestly, not a horrible idea considering the kitchen seems quite small, but in saying that again, her smeg freaking toaster is the same color as the cabinetry. Like, not everything needs to be perfectly beige and perfectly all the same color. You are allowed to have a few other additional colors, have some contrast even. It would have been actually kind of nice to have even just a black smeg there instead of the beige that we've got going. Add in something of you. Like, that's probably my biggest critique, is that I always see these spaces that get renovated and either A, the original home loses its voice because the person doesn't like the original character. We discussed that recently with the staircase fiasco. Oh my God, how depressing. But then B, people don't add in who they are. It's fine to have the sad girl aesthetic, loving modern farmhouse, minimalism stuff. That's totally okay. But when it looks so cookie cutter that there is no personality of you, your family, or the fact that you even live there, that's where I start having a couple of issues with it. She had major backlash about this. Some of the comments were horrible. Unseasoned to another level. The white girl tastes ruined homie's life. And see, ruins it for the rest of us. His soul is no longer in that space. Stop trying to fix the men in your life and learn to love them for who they are and the way they want to decorate. Jesus. Someone really wanted to psychoanalyze this poor woman. Obviously the backlash was pretty harsh, but they did try and take it from a positive sort of standpoint, and she didn't try and, change things back, which, look, go her for standing her ground and making sure that she's doing what she wants. The biggest critique that people had was that it just didn't feel like that he lived there anymore and she'd taken over.
Okay, so the $1 million question is, did you really like how we changed the apartment? You did? Good.
In saying that though, since that fiasco that happened, she has made some updates, and I really wanted to show you guys the progression that she's made and discuss whether or not it's actually been positive or negative. And honestly, I actually think it's been quite positive. So as we can see, she's made a couple of updates, and I actually think these are for the better, and these were going to be the recommendations that I was going to suggest. In the first image, it certainly looked like she just got a new sofa delivery, and, it looked like a brand new fledgling space. It hadn't quite been designed yet, and so this is where I really wanted to kind of discuss this a bit more, because usually design isn't something that's a before and after. It's a before and continue to create evolutions. Not everyone is, super duper rich or on the block or something like that and can have these massive transformations and then the space is done. It's just not reasonable. And I think the internet sometimes forgets that. So now that she's had some extra time, she's made some changes. So we've got a new piece of artwork, we've got a lamp in the corner, we've got different types of cushions, we've also got a new coffee table. As I mentioned, the flooring as well has obviously changed out, and she's also changed the dining room as well, which you'll see in some of the footage that I show. This feels a lot more lived in. Does it feel more cozy? Not particularly. And even though she's got all these additional cushions and a throw and all of that, why does it not feel cozy? Number one, she does have a new lamp, which is great, but I do think she probably needs a little bit more throughout the space to counteract how bright that top light is. It looks like it actually is dimmable, that top light, but because of the style of it, it just feels too stark and too bright. She probably needs to change out the light globe. Lamp in the corner is a good starting space. I do think that's really nice, but I do think there's probably room to grow with that. So maybe having a small table lamp either on the opposite side where the TV is, or maybe on the coffee table on the side somewhere. Having multiple light sources allows for the space to feel a little bit more moody and a little bit more inviting and cozy. The other thing as well is that the colors that she's chosen, she's starting to get there, I feel like. Honestly, I was going to recommend, because she's more of this clean girl aesthetic, I knew she probably didn't want that much color. But in saying that, she does like pink, and we've got that green wall as well. And I think we could have tied those in together with what the original space was kind of trying to do with her own style. The cushions that she selected, they're okay. I like the fact that there's a variation in comparison to the couch. Beforehand, it looked very blank. It looked very stark. There's a bit of texture, which I'm very happy about, but it still doesn't feel quite right. And there's a few things I dislike. The painting, I'm not a huge fan of. even though it's a very beautiful painting, I think it's really nice, I don't think it works for this space. And that's because it's a little bit too bluey. I think it would have been nicer if they had done like a scene of a meadow or something like that, where you could have tied in the greens and the pinks. And having just a smidge more color, it doesn't have to be a lot of color. It can be those neutral colors. You know how like, you know, sage green is often seen as almost like a neutral, or certain types of blues are sometimes seen as neutrals. Same sort of thing. We could have done that with pink. We could have put that into the cushions, mixed it in with some green. I really dislike the ottoman. Jars up the space and it doesn't feel quite right. And because you've got the giant ottoman, you need the tiny coffee table. Personally, what I would have done was go back to the original look. So have a larger coffee table, but then have a really nice occasional chair on the side. I also really dislike that rug. Personally, just not my style. Like having to vacuum it and then you can see all the lines and stuff. Not a fan. I liked what he had, the more knitted sort of look. That would have been nice in terms of having that creation of texture. The biggest issue here is that there is a conflict of styles. His was moody, dark, and inviting, whereas hers is quite literally the polar opposite. And I don't really blame them for having a bit of a struggle with trying to find a way to add him back in. Because if she's clean girl aesthetic, and he's moody boy aesthetic, let's say, how are you meant to mix clean and dark together? Yes, you could go ahead and do black and, you know, go in that darker sort of theme, but she wants to have that white sofa. That's pretty obvious. She likes those white light pieces. What do you do then? Well, I would have probably kept the original light fixture. I would have not necessarily have kept the original occasional chair, but I think it would have been better than having that ottoman. The coffee table, I think, you know, if that was like an oval instead, would have been nicer for the space. It's obviously too tiny and it's been selected based on the fact that the ottoman's too big. But if we got something that was actually fitting to the space, we'd probably be getting something that was rectangle or oval of some kind. And based on what I can see there's a bit of Scandi influence and a little bit of almost the mid-century influence. So I'd probably recommend something on the mid-century sort of line because it's nice and sleek. So it kind of gives her that clean girl aesthetic. Glass top as well, potentially, because that would be nice to be able to see the carpet underneath. And with my suggestions, I am kind of hoping that this would warm up the space a little. Because she wants that clean girl aesthetic, it's a little harder to add that warmth in because sometimes it can be seen as dirty, especially against a stark white couch. Adding those little bits of color, especially that pink, which I know she likes because she posts about it all the time. And integrating some of that green would be beneficial as well. I actually would recommend probably popping a plant or two in there as well because that'll add to the natural sort of aesthetic and also just add that life back in because it's very white and bright and doesn't have as much of those warming effects that he previously had. I think they need to lean a little bit more on plants because having those plants in adds that abstractness, but also the life back in. And of course, we have to reinstate that beautiful horse statue back onto the windowsill, and that would have tied it all in together. I think sometimes the hardest thing is understanding how to blend personal styles, especially when you have a partner or roommates. Sometimes it can be really difficult to try and blend styles that seem to clash against each other. And usually, yes, there is one style that kind of takes the cake. It's usually the primary style and then the other ones kind of are the additional pieces. But it's certainly possible and it's not impossible. And I think with the right thought process and just a little bit more tweaking, they can certainly add a little bit more of his personality back in. I don't think she did a bad job in terms of what she did updating wise, especially with the timber flooring. That definitely added a lot of warmth back into the space and added dimension as well. So not everything that she did was bad, but because people saw it just after she had changed a few things out, people saw this as the final iteration and of course were very upset with it because it does quite honestly look like a dentist office. I feel like I'm going to go sit there for the next 5 minutes and stress about the fact that I've probably got a cavity in the back somewhere. But that's part of learning and growing, especially with design. Design is something that's just meant to evolve with you. But yeah, that's all I have to say about this video. Let me know in the comments below what you would have done if you were her. And if you'd like to watch another video similar to this, make sure you check out this video next. And I'll see you on our next internet adventure.